This is Midwest Moxie, a show about our region's visionary entrepreneurs and the experiences that shape them. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher, Executive Director of Five Lakes Institute. Dan Schaefer didn't know it at the time, but the idea for his startup company began to take shape on the day he and his wife adopted a dog, a 10-week-old Labrador retriever named Louie, to be exact. Louie was in bad shape, so Dan and his wife turned to specialty pet nutrition to improve his health, and Dan found a great startup idea. In 2017, Dan and his childhood friend, Pat Barron, co-founded Native Pet, a St. Louis maker of all-natural supplements and treats for dogs and cats. The company now has 50 employees and has raised $20 million of venture capital. Dan, welcome to Midwest Moxie.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You and Pat, your co-founder, had cycled through a lot of ideas for a startup before landing on all-natural pet supplements. What made this idea so much more attractive than the others?
Well, I think first, all great ideas stem from problems that you experience as a consumer. And so we had wanted to be entrepreneurs. We had wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and we were both strategy consultants. So you try to be the smartest guy in the room, and you find all these big ideas that, go try to find problems that may or may not exist in categories that you're unfamiliar with. And what we found was that probably wasn't the best way to try to start a business. And so we had looked at a bunch of different entrepreneurial opportunities, but nothing had really stuck. And it was through my journey with Louie, we adopted him in 2014, got deep into the specialty nutrition, field as consumers. So we needed to find different ways to use food as medicine and to nurse Louie back to health. At the time, I wasn't thinking of it as a business idea. It was just a problem we had that we needed to solve. And so we became very smart consumers about what the options were, how do you do it, why do you do it, where do you do it? And so we had gotten very smart on the category on accident. And I think we had a light bulb moment at some point in 2016, 2017, when we said, well, hey, this is a real problem. The pet category is a big category. If it's a problem for me, it's probably a problem for other people. And that's really what started Native Pet right there, was an experience that I had, a problem that we had with my dog, Louie, and our journey to solve it created the foundation for what would become Native Pet.
Did you solve it? He had all these problems like worms and...
We did. With puppies, if you get out ahead of it, it was relatively easy, but it wasn't standard. And so we had to find different, foods to feed him. We fed him supplements. We had to walk him every day. We were adding stuff to his water. It didn't even take all that long. It was, call it a 12-week period after we adopted him. By the time he was 6 months old, totally healthy. He's a little bit of a weird dog, but we love him anyway. So we couldn't totally fix that. But he was feeling great by the time he was 6 months, and it was off to the races. But when you start in that way, you don't just stop once you get it fixed. So he's had a very special diet his whole life, and it's only gotten more special as he became the official taste tester for Native Pet.
You were working as a consultant at Boston Consulting before you started Native Pet. How did that experience inform the way you've thought about the company?
Oh, in a lot of different ways. I grew, incredible amounts while I was at BCG professionally. Taught me how to be structured, taught me how to communicate, how to think critically, how to solve problems. I never worked on any pet, projects while I was there, but I did a lot of consumer, and specifically a lot of consumer within the product innovation arena. So helping, big Fortune 500 company develop new products, new brands in-house. And so that was a really, really relevant experience. And it helped lay the foundation for what would become what I believe is our superpower at Native Pet, which is developing products that are highly effective, but have a fundamentally different approach than the other products that were in the market at the time. And they weren't just different for the sake of being different. They were different because they were better, and they attacked problems in a different way and in different formats. And I think that approach I really learned at BCG, and I was able to translate it with the help of Pat into the product line that would become Native Pet. There were some intangible things with just being professional and learning how to think and structure my problems and solve problems. But then there was some very specific tactical experience that has paid off in spades running my own business.
Well, that raises an interesting point. In the Midwest, there's, I would argue, more of a business to business expertise, and consumer is harder to do in the Midwest. Can you give an example of how you developed one of those products to fit what you're talking about, making it a good consumer product?
Yeah, I'll push back. I think the Midwest is actually a the epicenter of consumer products. Now, I think what you're referring to is in the startup community, startups don't tend to start in the Midwest. So I think
Right.
they're in LA, they're in Boulder, they're in New York City, they're in Austin, maybe in Chicago, but there isn't a huge consumerist ecosystem necessarily in Chicago relative to some of those other places. So, but if you look at where do the big consumer products businesses, think Mars, Kellogg, Procter and Gamble, the list goes on.
Yep.
A lot of them are based in the Midwest and in the northern Midwest, specifically, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio. And so there's a lot of people doing St. Louis, obviously.
So interesting that big company expertise doesn't translate to startups.
It should. I think that's maybe like a little bit of a separate issue with the way we run our startup ecosystems. There's a big focus on technology. I think these Midwestern cities would do well to spend some time looking at what is driving their local economies. And in a lot of instances, they're consumer products. So it was a unique challenge. I mean, we started the business in Detroit, Pat was in Chicago. We've moved it back to St. Louis. There wasn't necessarily a huge ecosystem of investors who were excited in those towns who were excited to get money into consumer. And so when we started, we really just focused on proving out our concept, finding products that we believed in, and getting started before we went out and looked to raise money or find any capital partners.
So about those products, how did you start developing those products? How did you know what was going to fly with consumers?
Well, I think that's where it centers in what my experience was. And we just went out and did a lot of customer research. So talked to friends, talked to family, Reddit forums. We reviewed tons and tons of Amazon reviews for products we were considering. And what we wanted to find were problems consumer were experiencing. And then we'd look at what were the solutions that were available today. We'd look at reviews, Reddit forums, et cetera, like where were those products falling short? And how could we solve those problems through product innovation? And that was the pipeline. And so, we had a ton of great resources in both Detroit and St. Louis to help support. How do you start a business? How do you get rolling? And I think we had to figure out for ourselves, how are we going to make our suite of products unique, better, different? And so that was something we took on our own.
So with this consumer research, I mean, you actually even went to pet food stores. And tell us about how you did your research in pet food
We would
stores.
just walk the aisles. I mean, it's gotten less fragmented, but it's very fragmented. You could shop on Amazon and see one set of brands. Then you can go to your independent pet store and find another set of brands. You can go to a pet specialty store like Petco or PetSmart, find another set of brands. That's changed quite a bit over the years. But at the time, if you really wanted the lay of the land, you'd have to go look at all those different places. What was Pet Supplies Plus selling? What was your local store in Detroit or St. Louis selling? And so we really wanted a comprehensive lay of the land. And then we just talked to people who were shopping. Well, why would you buy that one? Like, why wouldn't you buy this one? What do you like about this one? We talked to the store associates, particularly at independent pet stores. They are extremely knowledgeable and passionate about what they're carrying, especially when it's an owner operator. And they'll talk to you for hours if you'll let them. And so we would just go out, talk, gather information, and it was eye-opening just hearing directly from the consumer.
You seem like you have a good personality for that. Like, hey, I'm just the dude walking down the aisle. Tell me about what you're buying.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of problem talking to people. I am extroverted and not shy. Also, not don't feel a lot of shame. So I will have no problem approaching somebody cold.
You started out selling your products on Amazon. You've had a great deal of success. What made you so successful on Amazon?
I think it all comes down to channel. I think at the time, 2017, 2018, 2019, D2C was all the rage. And
Direct
people
to
thought
consumer.
direct to consumer. Yeah,
Hmm.
people thought we were crazy for starting on Amazon. But we knew that's where the consumer shopped, and especially the consumer that we were targeting shopped on Amazon. And there's no channel that's necessarily better or worse than any other channel or any other store or brick and mortar.
Channel
But
being a marketing channel.
yeah, I mean, we just felt like, you got to get really good at wherever you start. And we chose to start on Amazon. And I think what made us really good was we had a great product. We found interesting, new, creative ways to tell our story that captured the consumer's attention. And then Amazon's pretty meritocratic. If you have a great product with great reviews, you start to move up in the rank. If your product doesn't perform, you move down in the rank. And it's complicated, but it's also pretty simple.
You've broadened out from Amazon, and now you have, what they call an omni-channel consumer product. You're marketing in a lot of different marketing channels. Tell us about how you did that and what was important.
Well, we stayed on Amazon pretty much exclusively the first 5 years. And as demand for the brand grew and the business grew, we knew we had to continue to diversify our sales channels. So at that point, we said, hey, I think we could do direct to consumer, but I think what we really wanted to focus on was wholesale. And we pride ourselves on being available where the everyday American likes to shop. And we started on Amazon, and then we just slowly expanded into retail. Today, we're in 10 plus retailers, a lot of big national retailers, and our focus is on having the product available where our consumers want to shop. And we've been able to do that slowly and over time. We didn't rush into 10,000 doors immediately. It's taken 4 years to get there. But now we have a great national footprint in retail, and our retail business is our fastest growing business.
I should ask, so if I walk into a retail store, what kind of products of yours will I see?
It really depends on the retailer. At every retailer, the assortment is a little bit different. But we have our hero product. One product is called the Daily, which is effectively an athletic greens for dog. It's an everyday super supplement. It's just one scoop every day, and it's packed with 11 different active ingredients. It has 11 different benefits, and it's just kind of that all in one. We also have our omega oil that's in every retail store, and then from there a mix of powders and our air dried chews. And then we're just launching a new product line into PetSmart and Petco this fall, which is a microbiome focused line called Gutwell.
How big do you think Native Pet can grow?
I think the sky's the limit. I like to say it's $1 billion or bust for Native Pet. And I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but I think in reality, we think this business can be as big as we want it to be. It's a massive category. We have an avid, loyal group of consumers, and that's growing every year. We have tons of different product ideas and product innovations in the pipeline, and we really feel like we're just getting started. We have an amazing team and amazing partners, and Kavu Ventures, who's been our capital partner. And I think we're excited to take this to the moon.
And all happening right out of St. Louis. It's such a great story. Thanks so much for sharing it, Dan.
Awesome. Thank you.
You can read more about today's guest by visiting wuwm.com. Don't forget, you can also listen to the show as a podcast if you'd like to take us on the go. Just search for Midwest Moxie, that's MOXIE, wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher. Midwest Moxie was created by executive producer Audrey Nowakowski and me. Today's episode was produced by Audrey Nowakowski and engineered by WUWM's Jason Reevy. Join us next Sunday at 7 p.m. to hear from more visionary Midwestern founders building innovative companies. That's right here on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. Support for Midwest Moxie comes from Microsoft, whose efforts to drive technology development across the Midwest and beyond include its National TechSpark community engagement work, which started in Wisconsin, its role as co-founder of Titletown Tech in Green Bay, and its new AI co-innovation lab at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. More information is available at Microsoft.com. Support also comes from Quarles, a multidisciplinary AM Law 200 firm with approximately 550 attorneys who support large and small businesses, from Fortune 500 companies to startups and entrepreneurs across the country. More at Quarles.com.